Let me introduce my two speakers today. So Kate Hext is Associate Professor of Decadent Literature and Arts at Exeter University. She just wrote a book that's out, it's a wonderful book called Wilde in the Dream Factory, Decadence in the American Movies. But her latest book, which comes out next month, is this, The Importance of Being Earnest in Other Plays. So she has got all the plays in here as well as analysis, comments, context. So in other words, she's done her homework for today. Gyles Brandreth is, of course, an author, broadcaster, former MP, the author of a number of books about Oscar Wilde. He's written a series of murder mysteries starring Oscar Wilde. He is also that most 21st century of sinners, a podcaster. But Gyles is also, as I said before, president of the Oscar Wilde Society. And he has many personal connections with Wilde and his family, one of which we will touch on later. But to start, I'd like to ask both of you, give me a little bit of context, Kate, perhaps to you. When did Wilde write The Importance of Being Earnest, and what was happening in his life at that time?
Well, thanks for the kind introduction. So, this, as you'd have seen, wasn't it fun, though? Wasn't it fun? So, it's Wilde's most irreverent play, it's his last play, and it's the only play of his he wrote that he actually disliked. So he said there are two ways of disliking my play. One is to just dislike them, and the other is to like Ernest best. He wrote it, or he came up with the idea for it, in summer 1894, and it was because he needed some money. He had earned a lot of money, but he loved to spend. And it premiered on the 14th of February, so Valentine's Day, 1895. So when, in the middle of the play, you see he's sort of parodying love and courtship rituals, he's doing that on Valentine's Day. And the play closed, just to finish on the context, the play closed a few weeks after Wilde was arrested and charged with acts of gross indecency. In April 1895, he was convicted in May 1895. So when he was arrested at the Cadogan Hotel on the 6th of April 1895, he was taken to Bow Street police station, past the end of the street where The Importance of Being Earnest was playing to a sold-out audience.
How was the play, you said sold out, so it was popular back then as well?
It was popular, but it wasn't the most popular of his plays. So Victorian audiences loved sentimentality and melodrama. And one of the things that this play does, and one of the reasons why we love it so much today, is that it parodies those conventions. It parodies the very things that the Victorians loved. Their favourite play was A Woman of No Importance, a play that's hardly ever performed today. But it was popular. It was popular because Wilde was a very modern kind of celebrity.
And Gyles, why is it so popular today still?
I think it is popular. And hello, wasn't that exciting? I feel so regretful in the sense that we are trying to follow that. At least, Darcy, I obeyed your instructions. And Darcy sent me a note saying everybody is coming in pink. So I spent the whole day getting into my outfit. The dyeing of the white trousers yesterday was a total disaster. I put in too much pink, so it hasn't quite worked. And I turned up, and it's only Darcy who's come as Whistler and in pink. Anyway, that's by the by. But the reason I think it is popular today is that I would suggest it is the best play written in the English language in the 19th century. So you think of 100 years of the 19th century, I would be interested if anybody could come up with a better written, better constructed play, either drama or comedy as this is. I think it goes on working for us because it works. Simple as that. It's a masterpiece. The construction is superb, the lines are superb, and there is in it great truth. And I think people love it because it does often ring true. I think when you get a production like this, I mean, that you can play this play, it's like a great Shakespeare play. You can do it any which way you like. And this Technicolor high-octane, hugely engaging production gives us extra things, but you lose some things as well. And I think one of the things that you maybe lose is the ultimate feeling that actually you want these relationships to work. When I was in a production, one of the most touching moments always was Canon Chasuble and Miss Prism, and for them, the fulfillment of their relationship. So I think it works because it's a brilliant piece, and because it's so well done, and because the heart of it is love, and we like a bit of love. Anyway, I do.
Do you think it has extra resonance today because it's focused on identity issues? I mean, we're in the identity age where people choose their own gender and choose their own identity and choose their own name, all of that. And much of that we see in Importance of Being Earnest.
Yes, I think that's right. And I think that Wilde is, in a way, Wilde is so modern because he's grappling with those issues for the first time. He's questioning the conventions of masculinity, of femininity, of heterosexuality, and he gives us these other possible worlds, right? He gives us the possibility that although we end up with 3 marriages, the alternatives, whatever is going on, you know, at the beginning of the play, that sort of incredible dream sequence that is, of course, an addition with Algernon playing the piano, that wonderful sequence of his sort of striptease. Whatever's going on in that dream world might be more exciting, might be more fulfilling than the sort of conventions of romance could offer, I think. But maybe I'm less of a romantic than you.
No, I think what you're doing, what we always do, is we're bringing to the party ourselves, an our view of the world. I simply think what he's written is a great masterpiece. And I don't think he's inventing new things because he was living in a time when there was lots of being written that suggested 2 lives could be going on. You think of Robert Louis Stevenson, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. You think of places that, like Edinburgh, where there are 2 sides of the coin. So, I mean, I think there was writing of that kind of going on. But I don't think this is a code play. I don't think he was sitting down and thinking, I'm going to be sending out signals here. I think he was sitting down and just writing his piece, and it just worked. And I think he also was very high at the time, in the sense of emotionally high. I'm not suggesting he was high in that sense, so life is full of surprises. I only recently realised that George Grossmith, who wrote Down in Newton, one of my favourite books, one of the gentlest books, who was known as the great star of Gyles Sullivan, got himself through performances by injecting laudanum between the battle songs. So, like, you don't know what's going on in his lives. But all we have got is the play on the page. I added this thing about it being high, because it is a high-octane piece, and it is a fast, it's a high fast, given this kind of high-energetic production. I say it was high, only because I got into writing my 7 novels, the kind of serial stories like, through discovering that Arthur Conan Doyle had met him and liked him, as you know, the famous meeting at the Langham Hotel that led to Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes story and a relationship picture of Dorian Gray. But on that occasion, Arthur Conan Doyle had been totally charmed by Wilde. But he met him not long before the opening of this play. And he sensed that he had gone mad, that this lovely person that he'd known 2 or 3 years before, and he put almost as truly as that there was something hyper about him, using modern language to describe what Conan Doyle was saying. So I can see that here is this extraordinary energy that he's brought to the play, but what we now bring to it is where we're sitting now. So we live in the age of identity culture, we have an interesting director, it's fun to do, and then you put it on there, and it works. It doesn't work necessarily totally throughout, but it works, broadly speaking, and that's fine. But that's us, and not necessarily the play. A play is part of, there's an audience, and there's the writer, there's the director, and there's the writer, there's a cast, and there's the writer. So every production is a combination of the 2. why this play can work any which way you care to do it is because it's such a solid piece of work.
Can I come back on the energy? I wanted to pick up on what you said about energy, because one of the great things about this production, I think, is how energetic it is. Now, Wilde found it very difficult to write action. He liked to write people in drawing rooms having conversations, but what you see in the production that we've just watched is that his language, that epigrammatic wit that we love about Wilde, energizes the play into being and into a new kind of life here. So the stage directions that we saw, they're not Wilde stage directions, but they very well could be. They're the kind of way, if Wilde could have written action, I think he'd have written it like this. There are jazz hands, there are gestures, there are things that take us beyond the text to some sort of frisson of possibility. And I'd say, I completely agree with you. I think that double life, that's something we see before, but I think what Wilde brings that's new, and he does it through his style, is to make that double life seem not a subject of tragedy, but of something that could be fun. That there's no tragedy in living a double life or having a secret life. No one's going to die. We could just all end happily. And he's parodying conventions all the time.
Think of Dorian Gray when you say no one's going to die.
Well, Dorian wasn't here.
No, Dorian wasn't here, but there are dangers in this world.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
I'm not saying,
absolutely.
I'm suggesting
Yeah.
Wilde is not thinking that, what you're just saying. He's doing it here, but not necessarily overall.
No, you're right, but of course with Dorian, he just wanted to make some money. I mean, he had to end with him dying. That's
Yes.
what Victorian fiction is.
But I think we can't have it both ways. We can't have it one way he's trying to do something and then we totally agree it's just what's written on the page. And so I'm slightly quibbling with you saying,
I think by the time he gets to Ernest, but yes, in earnest, I would say. Wilde in earnest.
There's something about this play that has so often lent itself to a gay interpretation, and down to the fact that, in many productions you might have seen Lady Bracknell was played by a man in drag. But the play itself has three heterosexual relationships. They counted up various suggested of things, but the play itself has three heterosexual relationships. Why is this in any way a gay play?
No,
Okay.
You're the scholar, I'm the enthusiast.
You can enthuse about it being a gay play if you like. It's not a gay play, is the answer. It's not a gay play, but it puts into the air the possibility that something else is going on beyond heteronormative, heterosexual relationships. That Algernon and Jack, there's nothing sexual going on between them, but there could be. There's a frisson. Also, one of the things I loved about this is that Cecily and Gwendolyn have a bit of energy, right? A bit of chemistry when she takes the cake out of her mouth, and you think, oh, okay, yeah, I can see that. So it's the sense of possibility. That's it. So it's not gay. But I don't think, some people would say it is, I don't think it is, but I think, as I mentioned before, it suggests the possibility that something could go on, not necessarily gay, possibly queer, possibly just not within marriage, that's more exciting than what Victorian convention allowed.
Again, I think we are putting, as it were, our world onto their world. Until Wilde's arrest and the downfall and the awareness of his nature and his double nature became into the public domain, the kind of camp behaviour that you associate with, that for example is in Patience, the Gilbert Sullivan operetta, satirising those sorts of people, was not seen as something that was necessarily homosexual or gay. It was in the tradition of Lord Byron, the larger-than-life character, the person wanting to make themselves noticeable. Now we, 125 years later after Wilde's death, we now, understandably, bring all our experience and our wanting to feel that these things are happening to the piece. But that's why it's such a wonderful play, because you can do all sorts of things with it. and you gain something, the frisson, but you maybe lose something else. Interestingly, in this production, which is wonderful, it's fantastic, the energy and the charm and the brilliance of the performances. For me, the Algernon and Jack rang totally true right the way through, and their playfulness together, which you can interpret as being, if you wanted to have a gay frisson, you can, rang more true to me than the two girls. But now I'm learning something, and maybe there's going to be some cake work at home, darling, when we get back. Who knows? I didn't realise that was a thing, but maybe. Anyway.
We can talk after.
Yeah.
And actually, I mean, you've also taken us onto the female characters, and that was a real strength of this production, I think, the way in which these female characters really were brought out as having a life of their own, in which they too were sort of gesturing beyond convention in the sort of additions to the text. Now, if you know Wilde's play, or even if you don't, you probably noticed that there were additions to the dialogue. I learnt the other day, and I didn't know this the first time I saw it, I noticed the other day that a place called Dalston Superstore, I didn't know what that was. Perhaps you can...
No, I did not know what Dalston Superstore was either, I'm afraid to say.
I believe it's quite a well-known gay club in East London.
I'm taking your word for it.
Okay, so that was an addition. It didn't exist in 1895, these kind of gestures were brought in, and so this additional language, but also some of the whooping and the purring of Cecily and Gwendolyn suggests that they too have sexual lives that kind of run beyond the limits of what could be said on stage, I think.
I didn't object to the additions, though interestingly, the lines that work best and got the biggest laughs were the lines written by Wilde. And sometimes an addition can change the rhythm. It's like music. It can change. If you add a little something extra, actually you can take away from something that went before or goes after. So that, occasionally, I didn't feel that was quite right. And in some ways, too, the simplicity of doing something, a golden rule of comedy is to play it straight. So, for example, marvellous actor, but the person who gave us Lane and Merriman, for me, was too much in the realm of Ray Cooney on tour, rather than the National Theatre at its peak. That's a personal view, and I'm probably wrong, but anyway, that was my instinct on that.
So, Gyles, you played Lady Bracknell on stage. I mean, I saw it was a wonderful performance. What did you learn about her character or about the play from doing that?
What I know about Wilde, and anyone who knows about Wilde and his marriage, and who knows about Constance Wilde, and knows about the work that they shared and had common feeling of, was the importance of Wilde being a feminist, Wilde supporting his wife in her campaign for sensible clothing for women, his work on Women's World. He took women as people, and women liked him, and indeed he had affection and desires for women through the course of his life. So he takes women credibly. All his characters are credible women. I was excited to be offered the part of Lady Bracknell because I think it's just a great part. Interestingly, I think if you look at the original artist who played it is an actress called Rose Leclerc, who was a classical actress. She'd appeared with, I think, Irving and Terry. I think she was Olivia in a production where Irving was Malvolio and Ellen Terry was Viola, but she'd also been Desdemona to some great actor. She was a classical actress. She was about 53 at the time, which I think really probably is as old as you should be. This lady was exactly the right age in my opinion. I was too old when I played it. I played it as Queen Mary. My dress was completely Queen Mary. I enjoyed being it because I think that, and this shows it, that any good actor can play any part. And so really, I would be quite content to play Othello, no, not being a Moor, but having been to Venice, I suppose. I'd play Napoleon even though I'm too tall and don't speak French. So I mean, I'd be happy to take on any role. I liked her, and I came to agree with her. And what I think is interesting about Lady Bracknell is that though she is, it's almost impossible for us to view her outside the prism, if you pardon the expression, of the performance by Edith Evans. For every actress, indeed actor playing the part, that is their Beecher's Brook as they come to it. Some, like Judi Dench, chickened out and just mouthed the word. Others, like me, chuckled their way through it. It's a very This performance, I thought, was totally credible from beginning to end. And what I like about Lady Bracknell is she's actually got the right idea. She is a strong woman. She's put Lord Bracknell in his place, he's dining upstairs most nights. She is looking after the interests of her nephew and her daughter right the way through. She's a heroine, it's quite a small part. So when Rose D Clarke played it originally, I think I'm right in saying that most of the reviews, certainly many of them, did not mention her performance. It was all about the young people, their relationship.
One of the wonderful things here, I think, in this production was Sharon D Clarke's performance as Lady Bracknell. Her accent, the rich, warm vowels that really renewed, refreshed Wilde's language. So you heard those lines that we've heard before, some of us too many times. You hear them again. The short Q on the cucumber, the warmth in, as she says, Prism, as she summons Miss Prism back. And it just makes it so fresh. You're hearing it all over again.
Her diction was superb. She gave real value to the language. It's the world of Wilde. I liked her because she was true. In the production that I was lucky enough to be in as Lady Bracknell, we had Edward Petherbridge as Canon Chasuble. If you know this actor's work, he's now quite old, but a lovely actor. He was the first in Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, who was in the original production. Still to be seen on television as Lord Peter Wimsey, if you can find it on YouTube. He's just wonderful. But he gave us so much truth. And for me, that's the challenge of this play, is for it still to be truthful. And I think Prism and Canon Chasuble are terribly important figures. All the characters are important. I loved it.
Yes, and it's a very small cast of characters, actually, much smaller than Wilde's earlier plays. So you don't actually have many characters, and they are really valuable, each one sort of working together in the production,
Going back to what you said about language, the way that she pronounced Burberry, Burberry.
Yeah.
Completely different, like you said.
But also, the cucumber was wonderful. I really noted that. How do you say cucumber? Cucumber.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Oh, I loved her. I loved the costumes. And in a sense, that sent out the opening dance thing sent out a great signal for us, because it told us, cued us into what we're going to see. And then the Technicolor, almost like the set of The Wizard of Oz, gave us, this is going to be a heightened version.
Yes, exactly. It was Technicolor, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It wasn't Technicolor.
So at the very beginning, the first shot, in fact, of this film version, the first thing you see is a carving of a bunch of vegetables at the top of the proscenium arch. What does that signify?
I was worried you were going to ask this. I was worried. We reached the end. You did say about the vegetables, and I thought, I'm not sure. I didn't notice the vegetables.
I assume it is this first night that this happens. Anyway, legend will have it that it happened. The joy of Wilde is that you can really say anything you like. His work will stand the test of time. Every production, it will survive him. And he's created his own myth. And he would not mind what we say about him, because he's pleased that we're talking about him. So there we are. We can say anything we like. But all this was happening at the time of a crisis in his life. The pack of cards was about to collapse. Why he let it collapse, why he didn't leave the country, is not a question for tonight. But not long before this, it was the time when the Marquis of Queensberry had left the famous card at the Albemarle Club, accusing him of posing as a sodomite, which led to the first court case, which led to his eventual prosecution and downfall. Queensberry was clearly mad. He beat apparently his dogs and his women with equal vigour. there are excellent and interesting biographies of the madness, the badness of that family. But he was not high in the way that Oscar was. He, I think, probably was, well, crazy in some way. And he was obsessed with the damage being done, he saw it, to his family name and to his son, and arrived at the theatre with a bunch of vegetables instead of a bouquet of flowers to present to the author. The manager, was it George Alexander, somebody like that, made sure that their word got round. There might be demonstrations, and he made sure that there were people at the stage door and the various entrances to prevent the Marquis of Queensberry coming in. But he turned up with these vegetables as an insult to Wilde. And so that was a moment of taking the insult, turning it around and saying, yes! Look who's had the last word. Where is the Marquis of Queensberry now? And look, here is Oscar Wilde. And here, 125 years after his death. What I would like people to do, and I particularly like you as an academic to go and do, is really trawl the plays written in the English language in the 19th century. That can be Irish, it can be American, it can be from anywhere in the world, and come up with a better constructed, better written, more successful and popular play than this. Please send me an email, because I don't think there is one. And that's why we should celebrate this wonderful production of this wonderful play.
So final question, we loved it, would Oscar Wilde have loved this or not?
I would like to think that Oscar would have loved this production, and he would have loved how successful it was. But I'm not sure that he would, because Wilde is always more Victorian than we want him to be, more Victorian than he wanted to be. And I think he'd have had some reservations about it. It might have been a bit too out and proud for him, I think. He'd have loved the energy of it though. And what he would have loved was that somebody had written the actions for him, because he lost his mind trying to do the stage directions. He revised the play for publication after he came out of prison. So this play, we talked about it, we began on context, and it was written first before he was arrested, as I said, and it was premiered before he was arrested. But actually the version here, the version that we've seen, was the version that he completed for publication in 1899, so only a year before he died. The reason why he did that, and the reason why he published it, and it wasn't published under his name even, because he was unspeakable. It was published by the author of Lady Windermere's Fan. And so I think he'd have been absolutely delighted. It sunk without trace. When it was published, people didn't buy it. He hoped it would help to restore some sort of financial stability for him. It didn't. But he would be so delighted that we were having this discussion and that anyone was watching his play, I think, given where he was in 1899. So I think that's something that he'd be very pleased about.
Obviously, Kate is right. He was a Victorian gentleman, and with impeccable manners, a beautiful human being, a wonderful conversationalist. As my wife often reminds me, I say that Wilde once said that talking was the craft, listening was the art. She said, would you try to cultivate more art and less craft? So he was, in many ways, a conventional human being. Some would say the reason he didn't leave the country when he could have done was because he felt it would upset his mother, and he would stand and be a gentleman and face the music. I don't think he would have loved this production, because, of course, it's maybe more outlandish than he might have known at that time, except the Folie Bergère was already going on. If you think of Gilbert and Sullivan and those productions, a show like The Mikado or indeed Patience, he went to Drury Lane, he saw people like Dan Leno, so he was into high comedy. So I think he would have thought, well, why not? It's working. Are the royalties coming through? You know, I think he would have been quite content. He certainly would have been content with the attention we are giving him. So can we end by just applauding the memory of this extraordinary human being, the end of whose life is so tragic that if we stop to think about it, we can't bear to think about it. And he died prematurely, only in his mid-40s, with so much gift. But the great gift he gave us was this play, the greatest play of its time. So can we end by applauding the memory of Oscar Wilde?
Please applaud.
Yeah.
I want to thank Gyles. I want to thank all of you for keeping the spirit of Oscar Wilde alive, and obviously the National Theatre for giving us this fantastic production. If you want to learn more, Kate's book will be out next month, and it has all the information you'll ever want on the Importance of Being Earnest. And please do look into the Oscar Wilde Society. My name is Darcy Sullivan. Thank you very much for being here today.
Well done.